Imagine a quiet morning suddenly shattered by motion you cannot stop. A vehicle hurtles forward, metal screaming against the rails, carrying with it a terrible certainty. Down the track, human lives stand unaware. This is not a science fiction fantasy or a philosopher's trick. It is a moment designed to expose something deeply human. When survival and responsibility collide, what guides our hand? Logic, instinct, fear, or something older and quieter we call conscience. Documentary stories like this don't begin with answers, they begin with discomfort. They force us to sit with questions we'd rather avoid. In moments of calm, morality feels simple. But under pressure, when time collapses into seconds, morality becomes raw. The power of this story is not the trolley or the tracks, it's us. Our reaction, our hesitation, our judgment of others. This is where philosophy leaves the classroom and enters the bloodstream. As the scenario unfolds, the audience becomes part of the experiment. 5 lives ahead, 1 life to the side, no escape, no pause button. The question is brutally efficient. Do you redirect harm or allow it to continue? Most people respond quickly. Save the many. Sacrifice the few. It feels rational, almost mathematical. We count lives as if they are numbers on a screen. And yet, even as hands go up in agreement, something uneasy lingers beneath the confidence. Why does this choice feel acceptable? Is it compassion or calculation? Is it mercy or management? The documentary lens lingers here because consensus does not equal certainty. When many agree, we assume correctness. But history warns us otherwise. Moral comfort is not the same as moral truth. This moment reveals how easily human judgment aligns with outcomes rather than actions. Supporters of the decision speak with conviction. They argue necessity. They argue efficiency. They argue that tragedy does not disappear, it only shifts shape. To them, morality is about minimizing damage. If harm is unavoidable, then responsibility lies in choosing the lesser disaster. This reasoning feels mature, adult, even heroic. We celebrate it in war stories, emergency rescues, and national myths. The logic appears everywhere, one loss to prevent many. It is persuasive because it mirrors survival itself. Nature does not hesitate, but morality is not nature. Morality is reflection layered on instinct. And as the documentary explores these confident justifications, it quietly prepares the audience for something unsettling, a second scenario that looks similar, but feels completely different. The setting changes, same danger, same numbers, but now you are no longer controlling a machine, you are standing still, watching. And next to you stands a human being not on the tracks, not part of the problem, but close enough to become the solution. Suddenly, saving 5 requires direct physical violence against 1. The crowd's confidence fractures. Hands that rose easily before now remain frozen. The shift is subtle but devastating. The numbers did not change. The outcome did not change. Only your role changed. This is where the documentary slows down. Because this hesitation reveals something critical. We judge morality not only by results, but by how close our hands are to the harm. Here, the audience feels the emotional weight of action. Redirecting a vehicle feels indirect. Pushing a person feels personal. One feels like intervention, the other feels like murder. And yet, the result is identical. This contradiction exposes a crack in purely outcome-based thinking. If morality were only about numbers, this choice would be easy. But humans are not calculators. We are embodied beings, shaped by empathy, proximity, and guilt. The documentary invites viewers to notice their own discomfort, not to resolve it, but to respect it. Moral intuition, it suggests, carries information logic alone cannot capture. As voices debate, new explanations emerge. Some argue intention matters, others argue consent. Some say involvement creates responsibility, others say it creates guilt. Each explanation sounds reasonable until it collapses under scrutiny. Because the uncomfortable truth is this: no single principle explains all our judgments, and that realization is not a failure. It is the beginning of philosophy. The documentary reframes confusion as insight. When answers feel unstable, it means we are finally asking real questions. The narrative expands beyond rail tracks. Now we enter hospitals, emergency rooms, places where decisions are routine yet irreversible. Doctors face variations of this dilemma every day, not with hypotheticals, but with real bodies, real families, real consequences. When resources are limited, choices become moral statements. Saving 5 patients over one feels consistent with earlier reasoning. But once again, a line appears. Harvesting organs from the innocent feels categorically wrong, no matter how many lives it saves. The audience now sees a pattern. Morality resists simplification. This resistance forces a philosophical divide. One side believes goodness is measured by outcomes, happiness, survival, reduced suffering. The other believes some actions are forbidden, regardless of benefit. The documentary names these traditions not as academic labels, but as competing moral instincts living inside each of us. We shift between them depending on context. And that instability is not weakness, it is humanity wrestling with itself. The story pauses to reflect on why these questions endure. They are not puzzles to be solved once and stored away. They return because life keeps placing us in morally imperfect situations. Every society, every generation, replays these debates in new forms: war, medicine, law, technology. The trolley changes shape, but the question remains. Part 1 closes with a warning. Philosophy does not comfort, it unsettles. Once familiar beliefs are questioned, they cannot return unchanged. Moral reflection is irreversible, and that is both its danger and its power. The documentary now turns inward. It asks not what is right, but what reflection itself does to us. Philosophical thinking disrupts certainty. It distances us from tradition, instinct, and social agreement. This distance can feel liberating or paralyzing. Once we see assumptions as assumptions, obedience becomes harder, and societies are built on shared assumptions. This is where philosophy becomes politically risky. Historical voices echo through the narrative. Thinkers who challenged norms were often accused of being impractical, dangerous, or corrupting. Questioning morality, critics argue, weakens action. Why hesitate when the world demands decisions? Why doubt when survival is at stake? The documentary does not dismiss these fears. It takes them seriously, because reflection can slow us down, and slowing down can feel like failure in moments of crisis. But the story pushes further. It suggests that unexamined certainty carries its own danger. History is filled with confident decisions later judged as atrocities. When morality becomes automatic, it becomes vulnerable to misuse. Reflection, though uncomfortable, acts as resistance against blind momentum. The temptation, then, is skepticism, to shrug and say morality is personal, to retreat from judgment altogether. But the documentary challenges this escape. We do not live neutrally. Every action implies a value. Even refusing to choose is a choice. Skepticism pretends to avoid responsibility, but in reality, it only hides it. The power of moral philosophy lies not in final answers, but in disciplined questioning. It teaches us to hold tension without collapsing into slogans. It trains us to examine not just what we do, but why we feel justified doing it. This skill is rare and necessary. As the narrative returns to survival scenarios, starvation, sacrifice, desperation, it acknowledges a brutal truth. Extreme situations force tragic choices. But acknowledging necessity does not erase moral cost. Something is always lost, and philosophy ensures we do not forget that loss. The documentary reframes morality as a lifelong practice, not a rule book. We refine our judgments through experience, dialogue, and error. The goal is not purity, but honesty. Thinking deeply may make us less efficient, less obedient, less comfortable. But it may also make us more humane, more cautious with power, more aware of who pays the price for our decisions. The final message is not instruction, but invitation. These questions belong to everyone. They shape laws, medicine, technology, and survival itself. To ignore them is itself a moral stance. The documentary ends quietly. No verdict, no hero, only a reminder. The most dangerous moment is not when we face impossible choices. It is when we stop thinking about them. Because once reason rests, responsibility disappears, and the story ultimately is about us.